virtual main. And then once I install virtual main, I'm going to show you how you can add a couple of WordPress sites on the virtual main server. So basically the tutorial is about how to set up Debian 10, install virtual main, and then how you can add multiple WordPress sites. So I will be using WordPress for this example. And most importantly, I'm going to use the virtual main lamp stack. Lamp. We're going to use the lamp stack. We're not going to install Apache. And for DNS, I'm going to use Cloudflare for DNS. So if you don't have a Cloudflare account, just go ahead and sign up. It's free. And this is what I'm going to use for DNS. I'm not going to use virtual main for the DNS, even though I'm going to install it. You can use it as well if you want to. And I do have a video about exactly how you can go about using any of these platforms, whether it's virtual main, CyberPanel, or whichever you want to use. You can use, there's a video I did about that, and that was specific to CyberPanel, but you can implement the same methods for virtual main. I'm going to use Valtra as my VPS of choice. If you don't have a Valtra account, go ahead and sign up. The link is in the description. So let's just get started in the next video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy the first instance. And the first instance we're going to deploy is of Debian 10. And once we install Debian 10, I'm going to start setting up the server. So I'm going to use a post that I already created. So if you go to bizanosa.com, there is a Debian setup post that I did. See how you can log in. And I'm not going to log in via PuTTY. For this specific tutorial, I will be using what's it called? It's called Git Bash. So if you don't have Git Bash installed, just go ahead and install it. You can download it from Git. Just go to Google, and I'm going to show you that when we get there. I'm going to use Git, but if you want to follow along with PuTTY, you can follow along with this post, which has everything you need, including how to set up SSH. We're going to set up everything we need to set up. The only thing we're not going to do here is set up a firewall. We're going to let virtual main handle that for us. So all this we're going to set up, and let's just get started in the next video. And what we're going to do is we're going to come here and we're going to deploy our first server. So you can follow along with any VPS, but I will be using Valtra. Valtra is very easy to use. The interface is very user-friendly. That's the only reason I'm using it. And the servers are also reliable. So that's why I'm using them, okay? Let's continue in the next step, and I'm going to set up the server in the next step. So let me deploy the server, and as I said, you can use Valtra or any VPS that you want to use. For me, I'm using Valtra. So if you want to deploy a server, just go there and deploy a new server. And I will be using Debian 10. So for this, you can use Cloud Compute or High Frequency. And I'm going to use Cloud Compute for this. This is 20% more expensive than that. And they say this is much faster than that. So I'm going to use, let me choose a location in America. And I'm going to choose a location. I will choose the Chicago data center. And then the operating system, I want to install Debian 10. So I'm going to click there, and then I will select Debian 10. And the server size, since I want to install virtual main, I want something that at least has 2 gigs of memory. So I'm going to choose this one for 10. I'm going to choose the $10 server, which has at least 2 gigs of memory. And of course, I will enable IPv6. I don't have any startup scripts, and I don't have the SSH key. I'm going to show you how you can set up the SSH key. And for the server hostname, I don't know which one to use. Let me log into Cloudflare and choose a domain that I can use. So for the server hostname, make sure you're using a name that is a fully qualified domain name. A fully qualified domain name, that's a name that you can access. If you add DNS records, it should be something that is accessible. You can use a full domain, or you can use a subdomain. So if you want to, you can use something like a full domain like that, or you can use a subdomain. But in my case, I want to use a subdomain. So I'm just going to add here panel dot. That is the host name, and this is going to get set up on Debian. If you want to change it, you can change the host name on Debian using the terminal, using the command line. You can do that, but just make sure you set it up now, since we're going to install virtual main, and our aim is to run a WordPress website, and we also want to be able to send mail. Make sure that you have a subdomain that is a fully qualified domain name. So I'm going to add that as my host name, and then for the label, you can use anything that you want. I'm just going to leave it as it is, and then let me just go up and see if there's anything I've missed, and everything is as I chose it. So I'm just going to click here and I will deploy my server. So let it finish installing. It's going to take a while, not even more than 5 minutes. Let's just click on it to see if it's already given us an IP address. Okay, not active. Just give it a few minutes, and then we're going to come here, click on it, and we're going to get user root, and we're also going to get a password and an IP address, and you can use the IP address to log in. So let me click on it again, and you can see now it is ready. So by the time you're watching this I will have removed this server. I will have destroyed this server. So don't try to access it in any way. So if you want to see your password, you can click there to see the password, and you can copy it. You can copy your IP address, and the user is root. So you can log in. If you want to log in via party, there is a guide here how you can log in via party. But I want to log in using Git Bash. So I'm on Windows. I'm doing this tutorial on Windows, and you can use Git Bash if you want that terminal-ish environment. So if you are on Linux, Mac, you can still follow along with me because I will be using Git Bash. If you prefer to use Party, the tutorial is here, how you can set up your server using Party, and I'm going to follow some of those as well. So if you want to install Git Bash, just come to Google and you're going to search for Git. Let's just search for Git. And you want to download it from Git SEM. Come here and click on Downloads, and then download the one for Windows. So I'm on Windows. I'm going to download the one for Windows. I already have it installed. I'm just showing you what you can do. So once the download is complete, this is going to install everything we need. It's going to install Git Bash. It's going to install Git, and it's also going to install Git CMD. So anything that you want to do with any of those others, you can do, but we are only interested in Git Bash. So once you install it, just go and open it up, and we're going to use these details to log in. So I'm going to come here in my start menu, and I want to look for Git Bash. So open up Git Bash, and once you open Git Bash, the first thing you want to do is we want to try to log into our server. So I'm going to copy the IP address, and to log into the server, I will just write SSH. So this is the same way you log in on terminal if you're following along on terminal on Linux. So I'm using Windows, as I've said. So SSH, and then the user root at my IP address. So on Git Bash, you can paste by doing shift insert and then enter. And it's going to ask me if I want to allow this server into my hosts file. And this is a new server. So I'm going to type yes, and then enter. And this has been added to your hosts file. So that means that it is a known server, a known address. And then I'm going to go back, and I need to copy the root password. So I'm going to copy the root password, copy. And as I said, on Git Bash, you can paste by shift insert. You won't be able to see the password as you type it in or as you paste it in, but just press enter, and you should be logged in. Right, there we go. So now we're logged into the server. We can try to update the server. We don't really need sudo at this point. So I'm just going to do apt update to check if there are any updates. Okay, all packages are up to date. So in the next video, let's come in and we're going to create a sudo user. So the sudo user is a secure way for you to use your SSH. Once we do that, we're going to disable the root user so that they won't be able to log into the server. And from then on, anything that we do, we're going to use the sudo command. So everything we want to do, sudo update, sudo apt install, all that, we're going to use sudo. And we're going to do that once we set up the sudo user. So that's what we're going to do next. So if you're still with me, this is where we had stopped. And what needs to happen now, we need to create a sudo user. So I will clear the screen. So we need to set up, as I've said, we need to set up a sudo user. And the sudo user is going to give us all the admin privileges that we need. So let's come back to the post here, And the link for this is in the description. If it's not there, just remind me and I'm going to add it. So you can also use party to log in if you want to. So let's add the user, and I'm going to give it a different name from that. Add user. Give the user a strong password. All right, password updated successfully. All these others, I can just press enter to skip all of that. All right. And then the next step is we want to make this user a sudo user. Okay. So we need to add them, give them the sudo privileges. Okay. So I'll copy that bit. And I'll paste that, and the user is that. So give it the user that you created. So this user now is an admin user. So if you do experience any problem, depending on the VPS that you're using, you may experience a problem whereby this command is not going to work. You're going to get told that sudo is not recognized. So what that means is that they have a very minimal install of Debian, and what you need to do is you need to install sudo. That's all you need to do. Just install sudo and then run the command again. All right, so the next step is for me to try and log in. So I'm going to try and log in with the new details for this guy, and then once we are able to log in and we are able to run sudo commands, I'm going to immediately disable the root user from logging into the server. I will open up a new get bash window, and then I want to get the IP address, and I want to log in SSH, new user. And then the password for the new user. Okay, there we go. The new user has logged in. So let's just test if we can run sudo commands. So I'm going to do sudo apt enter the password. So every time you use sudo for the first time, it's going to ask you for the password. And you can see we can run sudo commands. So that means that everything is working well. So we've already set up the new user. Now the next process is, let's see what's next here. The next process, I think we need to set up SSH, and I'm not going to set up firewall because I'm going to install virtual main, and virtual main is going to add all the ports that we need. The next thing is to set up SSH. So you can set up SSH using party, but I'm also going to show you how you can set it up using git bash. So using the git bash method on Windows, if you're on Windows, you can set up SSH using git bash or using party. If you are on a Mac or a Linux, you can use git bash. You can actually follow along with me using git bash, but I also do have a very intense tutorial here, very intensive, about how you can set up SSH on your Linux or Mac computer for your CentOS, RHEL, Debian. So this basically works on any Linux distribution. So just follow this if you want to set up your SSH key and be able to log in using SSH. And then once we do that, we're going to disable password authentication so that people can only log in using the SSH key. So if someone doesn't have the SSH key, they will not be able to access the server. And that's the next thing that we're going to do. I can set up this using git bash or party, but I do have a tutorial with git bash. So let me just look for that. Let me just search for git bash. And there we go. You can set up SSH using git bash. And this will also work for you. If you're on Windows and you're following along with git bash, you can use this one as well. So this is just the same way that you do it on Linux, all right? So this is what I'm going to do in the next video. I'm going to use Git bash to set up SSH authentication. So I'm going to see you in that next part. If there's anything that is not working for you, just let me know and we'll see what the issue could be. In the last one, you saw how to set up a sudo user, an admin user with root privileges. So in this video, let's see how you can set up SSH authentication using Git bash. So I'm on Windows, that's why I'm using Git bash. But even if you're on Linux or you're on Mac, you can still follow along with this. But as I told you in the last video, there's another post that you can follow if you're on Mac. If you're on a Mac, just come down to this part where it says SSH key authentication. The link for this is in the description, and click there. And this is going to take you to this page. And on this page, you can set up SSH key for any Linux computer. So let's see how we can set up the same for our Debian, and I will be using Git bash. So as I said, if you don't have Git bash, you can download Git, and it's going to come with Git bash, and I showed you that in a previous video. Just download Git, and it's going to come with Git bash, Git cmd, and Git GUI. Just here are the steps of what we're going to do. Of course, you install Git, you can download Git, and then we'll generate the key pairs. So since I'm on Windows, the first thing I want to do is I want to go to my home directory, and on the home directory, there is a .ssh folder, and inside of that folder, I'm going to create another folder for this demonstration. So this method that I've illustrated in this video is a nice way for you to create multiple keys. So if you want to create multiple keys, this is a way for you to go. Okay, and let's go into my home directory. So however you want to get to your home directory, if you're on Windows, you can always get to your home directory. You can just go to local disk, and inside of users, whichever user, that is your home directory. For me, that is also my home directory. Okay, so that is your home directory, and you can see for me, even hidden files, even hidden folders are being shown. So if your hidden folders are not being shown, just come here under view. I think it's under view, then you go into options, and then view again, and hidden files and folders, show hidden files, and make sure you select that. If you don't have hidden folders showing up, make sure they are visible. So for me, I want to go here inside of SSH, and let me create another sample, Control-Shift-N, and I want to call this, let's call this virtual main. So you can see that this is a really nice way, because you can group all your different SSH keys in different folders. If you do any default method that most people show online, you won't be able to do this. So just make sure you follow either of my posts. It's going to show you how you can log in even once you create multiple SSH keys. My SSH keys that I'm going to generate are going to be inside here. Okay, so that's the first step. Make sure that you have this .ssh visible on your home directory in Windows. Okay, so that's the first step. I have created the folder, and you can see that here in this post, what I did is I did change directory. So cd is a way for you to change directory into this folder. So for me, I would have, if I was following this method, I would have to SSH into the virtual main folder that I've just created, and that's going to ensure that I don't have to add the path every time I want to do anything here. And even next time when you have to log in, you can cd into that folder so that you can get the private key for logging in. This is much easier to understand if I'm doing a demonstration. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm not going to cd, but you can cd, okay? You can change directory into that folder. And if you change directory, it simply means that anything else that you do after that, you don't have to put, like for instance, there, that is the name of my key. Here, if I did not cd into that folder, I would have to add this location, copy that, and then you put it before this, okay? And that's the way that I'm going to do it. But you can still follow along with this and do it like this. But I'm not going to cd, I'm just going to add the path. So let me copy that, and I want to put this inside of a txt file. Let me put that inside of a txt file so that I don't forget it. And there, so this simply means my home directory. So instead of adding the path to my home directory, that's that will replace that, my home directory. And what's the name of the folder that I've just created? It's called virtual main. So let me copy this as well. And I need the path. I just need this path. And this is where our keys are going to be. So you can see our keys will be stored inside here. So this is just the path to where my keys are. And now I can start following along with this tutorial. So the first step is, you can see if you CD, you don't need to add the path, but I'm going to have to add the path in my case. So I will copy all of this and I will bring it into Notepad. And here in Notepad, as I said, you need to add the path. So if you CD into the folder, since you're on Windows, you don't need it. You don't need to add the path. That was just a way for me to save time. And this is the name of the key, virtual main /. So this is the name of the key. The private key and the public key will have that name. And you can change this name. It doesn't have to be anything like this. I'm just calling it this, but you can call it whatever you want, okay? I'll just call it first server, just to show you that you can change the name. So this SSH keygen is going to generate a key, and the type of key we want to generate is RSA, and the bytes we want to generate 4096. You can generate 2048. There is also 1024, but of course we want the highest, which is B, 4096. So this is the bytes of the key we want to generate, and this is just a comment. You can add anything that you want there. It doesn't have to be an email. That's just a comment that I've added there. And then now this is going to be where the file is going to get stored. Okay, so if I copy this, and just remember that this is being done on your local computer. So I will open. So I was logged in here as root. I can just delete this. I can just close that. I don't need that. And then I'm logged in here as a new user. Remember, we don't need to do this. We're not doing this inside the server. We're doing this outside of the server on a Windows computer. Right now we're logged into the server. So let me log out, and I can just do exit to log out. And you can see that has logged me out. Now you want to do this on your computer, okay? So this is on my computer, not in my server. This is where we are going to generate the key, and I'm going to paste that in there. You need to copy that. And let me just clear this screen. I will paste in this. What is up? Let me copy that. Copy. And then I will come here. There, SSH keygen. And remember, since I did not CD into the folder, I have to add the entire path. And as I said, this just replaces the path to my home folder. Okay, so that is what that does. And I'm going to press enter to generate our key. Now, of course, you want to add a passphrase for your key. A passphrase is an extra security for your key. So even if somebody gets access to your key, they will not be able to use it without knowing your passphrase. So it is like a password for your key, and you're going to generate the key with a passphrase. So for me, I'm just going to use a simple passphrase here, but make sure you use a passphrase that you can remember. Make sure you add this. This is very important, okay? So you can see our key has been generated, and the path to our private key is that, and the path to our public key is that. So this is a public key, and as I said, this path right here can just be replaced. This entire path can just be replaced with a tilde. So I'm going to copy this. Let me just copy both of them. Copy, and I want to add them. I want to paste them down here because I'm going to need them. Of course, I don't want to copy the entire thing. So from here, we'll just replace that with the tilde. So this is the one without .pub. That is your private key. And then this other one, this is our public key. And this one as well, I don't want the entire path. I'm just going to replace that with the tilde. Now we've generated the key. The next step is for us to add it to our server. So just remember that I did CD. In this post, I CD'd inside of that directory, but I did not cd, but I haven't cd in the video that I'm doing. So SSH copy ID, this is going to get used to copy our public key to our server, and this is how it should be right there. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this. Let me copy this one, and then I'm going to replace all the elements that I need with the correct elements. So I'm going to come to the text file that I had here, and in this text file, let me just paste in that. Now SSH copy ID, now we do want the identity of the key. This is just a flag to let the system know the identity of the key. So we want to copy this into our server. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to bring that path there, and I will paste it. Okay, and then the user, that is the username that I've been using on my server. That is the user that I've been using, and then the host, the IP address for my server. I can get that there. Paste. So this is going to add the key to our server. So it's very important to note that in this post, what I did is I cd'd into that folder. So that's why the path doesn't have the actual link. It just has the name of the key. Let's come back to git bash, and I'm going to paste in this, and this is going to try and install the key on our server, and we need to log in. This is a login for your server. All right, so the key has been added, and you can see that the key was added successfully. Now try logging into the machine with the SSH key. Now to log into your server, let's come back here. To log into your server, you just need the identity of your key, and that's it, and the user you're logging in as. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to copy them, and then I'm going to replace things appropriately as I need to. So SSH into the user, and we have the user here. User plus IP address, copy. User plus the IP address, that's who we want to log in as. Remember to add the user, to add the SSH authentication for the pseudo user you set up. And then we need the path to our private key. Okay. We added, in this part, we did add the .pub key, which is a public key. Now we need to log in with our identity, with our private key. So the private key link is that. So I'm going to copy this, and remember the private key is the one that doesn't have .pub. .pub is the one which is public, which is your public key. Paste. So once you generate these keys, make sure you save them somewhere so that if you ever lose your computer, you can still get access to them. You can still get those keys and try to access your server using those keys, especially the private key. So I'm going to copy. So I'm going to copy that, and I will come back here, and I'll just paste that in. This is just to try to log in. So enter the passphrase for the key. If you did set up a passphrase for these keys when you are setting them up, make sure that you enter that passphrase. There we go. Now we are logged into the server using our SSH keys. And before I even end the video, the next thing that I want to do is I want to disable root login, and I want to disable password authentication. So I'm going to come down here, and I need to go to the SSH configuration file, and I need to disable root login, and I need to disable password authentication. So I want to do that in this video so I don't have to do it in the next video. Copy. And enter the user password. So every time you use sudo, you need to enter the password for this user. All right. So I need to find root login, and I need to change this to no, and I also need to find password authentication, and I need to change that to no. So I'm going to do Control W on nano, and then I will paste and permit root login currently set to yes. We don't want the root user to be able to log in via SSH. So I'm going to change this one to no. And then the next step again is I need to disable password authentication. So if someone doesn't have access to our keys, they will not be able to log into our server, and that's what we want. We only want people to be able to log in using the key that we set up. So I'm going to paste that in there, enter, and then password authentication, you can see right now it is commented out. So I'm just going to uncomment it and then scroll all the way. And this, we want to make this no. And then I will do Control X, Y, enter, and that's going to save it. And I need to restart SSH. So I can just do sudo service SSH restart, and that's going to restart SSH. And now if somebody tries to log in as a root user, they will not be able to log in. If somebody tries to log in via password, they will not be able to log in. Right now, the only way to log into our server is using the keys that we've set up. So do yourself a favor and just copy that and save it somewhere so that you can use this to log into your server if you need to. Okay. So I've just recalled there's something that I've forgotten to do, and that is to change the permissions for our SSH key and the SSH folder. So what we need to do, let's see if the permission thing is here. Okay, the permission thing is here. So I can just change permission for the SSH folder and the authorized keys on your server. So you need to make sure that the keys are not easily accessible, and that's what we're doing here. So I'm just going to copy this, and this will change the permissions for that SSH folder, and for the key, it's going to give it a permission of 600, so no one else has access other than root. Okay, and once you do that, you'll have to change the ownership for that file to the new user that you've set up. Otherwise, you won't be able to log in. So I'm going to copy this and I will paste that in there. So the permissions have been changed. Now the next thing is for you to give ownership. You need to change the owner of that file and everything inside of this directory to the user that you've set up. Otherwise, you will not be able to log in. This is very important. So I'm going to copy that. And I'll put it there. So every instance of Joe, give it the group of the user you've set up, and the group will be that new user. So the group of Joe, user Joe, home directory Joe, and once you do this, you'll be able to log in. Copy, paste, and then enter. And now let's open up a new instance of Git Bash, and we need to try to log in. So that is our login. I will paste. All right, you can still log in. So that's everything that we needed to do in this video. And in this video, you have seen how you can set up SSH authentication using Git Bash. So you can follow the same steps. If you're on Linux or Mac, it's just basically the same steps. And if you don't want to use Git Bash, you can also use Putty and Puttygen. And I do have a video for that. If you come here, you can do that. If you go to this link and you scroll somewhere down here, you can watch the video right there. This is a video for using Putty and Puttygen for SSH keys. So if you if you get lost, make sure that you follow along and everything is going to work out correct. Now the next step is in our setup. We've already set up SSH keys. The next step is going to be, let's create the swap file, and I can create a swap file for 2 or 3 GB. A swap file is just a memory location that will be used when memory runs out on our server. So that's something that you need to add, especially if you have a low memory VPS. And then once we do that, we're going to get to installing virtual main, and then we'll see how to use virtual main to set up WordPress. And as I said, I'm just using WordPress as a sample. If you want to use any other websites like Joomla, Magento, you'll see how you can do it. And please note that I will be installing the LAMP stack. I will not be using LAMP. I will not install Apache. I will just install Nginx and PHP, my admin, for virtual main. So that's it for this one. I will see you in the next one, and let's continue in the next one by creating a swap file. Okay, so let's add a swap file, and then we're going to install virtual main after that. So let's just check if we do have. Now please note that there's something wrong with my site, and when I add 2 hyphens, it does that. Okay, so this is how it's supposed to be. Okay, like in this screenshot. So make sure that you note that any place where there are 2 hyphens, you will get something like that. So that is wrong. So let's first of all just see if we do have a swap file on our VPS. So sudo swap on, we're going to create a swap file. Sudo swap on, and then -- show. So when you get the result like that, let me just do it again. When you get the result, no result, that means that there is no swap file. If there was one, it would have shown you the swap file. Now let's create a swap file, and I'm just going to give it the same names because I don't want to retype or edit anything. And I'm just going to also make it 2 GB. You can make it 3 GB, 4 GB if you want to. It depends on what you want right now, but don't make it too big if your memory is low. 2 GB is okay for me, so I'm going to use that. And now we need to change permissions for the swap file that we've created. So this is the name of the file. This is the name of the swap file. You can change the name if you want to use whatever name you want to. You can even store it somewhere else if you want to. Okay, you can see this is currently being stored under the root directory. If you want to change it, you can change it. So I'm going to copy that, and this just changes permissions for that file so that it has root level permissions. And then once we do that, this is going to make it a swap file, and this is going to turn the swap on. So what I can do is I can just copy the entire thing. As I said, I don't want to edit anything. That's why I'm just using the same name, and that's going to save me time. So I'm pasting that in there, and this is going to turn the swap on. And you can see now we do have a swap file for 2 GB. So right now, if I do sudo swap on show, it's going to show you that we have a swap file called my swap file, and the size is 2 GB. So the next step is, so right now, if you were to restart the system, it's not going to recognize that swap file. So what I need to do again is I will just need to add it into the FS tab file. And in this file, it lists the memory for the system so that when the system starts, it doesn't have to look for anything. Everything is already listed here. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put that in there. So inside of this file, we need to open that file, and then we need to put this in there. So if you changed the name of the file or the location of the file, make sure that you update yours as you need to. So just scroll down, okay? And once you get here, you can just paste it. And once you do that, you can do Control X, Y, enter, and that's going to save the changes. And now you don't need to do anything else. If you do free -h to see the memory that you have. You can see we do have memory, our physical memory of 1.9 gigs, and we have the swap memory of that. Okay, so that's that, and that's pretty much it for this. In the next video, let's see how we can install virtual main, and that's the last thing that we need to do. We're going to install the lamp stack of virtual main, and once we do that, we're going to see how we can run WordPress in virtual main. And as I said, we will be using Nginx, so I'll see you in that one. Okay, finally we have to install. Finally we get to the part where we install virtual main. So I'm just going to copy that from there. So make sure your server is set up by the time you get to this stage of installing virtual main. Make sure that you have already set up your server like we've done in the previous videos. So that is the most important part, setting up your server. So as I said, my website is having problems with this -- if I put -- in anything, it somehow strips out one. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this, but I need to edit this so that it can look like that with 2 dashes without any spaces, to let virtual main know that I want to install the lamp stack and I don't want to install lamp stack. So I'm going to paste that in there, and let me just come this way, delete that space there. I will add 2 hyphens, -- What is the problem here? Oh, it has come with some formatting. Let me just do that again. Remove any formatting there. Enter. And now virtual main is telling you that these are the supported operating systems, and we are going to install the lamp stack for you. Okay, so it will require up to 650 MB of disk space. And do you want to continue? Absolutely yes. And then let's just let it run, install everything it needs. And then once everything is installed, we're going to come back here and we're going to see how we can add our first website. Now, before I even do that, let me come here. So the name of our hostname was that. Let me go and add the DNS records for this on Cloudflare. And as I said, I will be using Cloudflare for my DNS. Okay. So I will add an A record, paste that in there with my IP address. So if you don't want to use Cloudflare for your DNS, I don't know, maybe just look through my videos. There's a video I did about how you can create child domains. So there, and I know right now the port used by virtual main is not supported by Cloudflare. So I'm going to disable proxy and I'm going to save. And I want to do the same for, and let me add a CNAME record for www. So I will add a CNAME record for www panel1, and the target is panel1 . I don't know whether I can add that. Is it possible to add that? Yeah, let's see if this is going to give me, and I will unproxy that, save, and yeah, you can see it does automatic. So you can use art to replace the domain name anywhere. Instead of typing the domain name, just type art and it's going to get replaced with that, with the domain name. So panel1, we've added that. And for this one as well, let's change the IP address, because I see I was using it for a different tutorial at some point and this IP address is no longer available. So I'm just going to paste in the new IP address for a record, and I'm going to install WordPress here. I'm going to show you how you can install WordPress on that. And www, instead of using an A record for www, let me use a CNAME record. So for www, let me add a CNAME record, CNAME for www, and the target is art. And that can be proxied because it will be accessible via the Cloudflare network. So these ones, I was probably using this for a different tutorial. So let me just delete them. JavaScript sample. I will delete the sample. This I was using for a different tutorial. This one as well, I was using for a different tutorial. So I'm just going to delete both of that. Now, is there anything else that I need to add here? There we have that. And you know what? I can also add mail. Let me add mail. Mail, is it an AMX? We already have that. So I think mail will just use this. It will automatically get added here. Okay. Now the reason that I have chosen to install bind, which is used for DNS, is because it will automatically create some of these records for me. And if those records are created, I can just copy them. Okay, if I ever need anything, I can just copy them from there. Let's just wait for it to finish installing, and then we're going to try and access. We're going to try and access it. For now, I've already changed the IP address to reflect. Let's just see if Nginx is already installed and set up. So you can see Nginx is already installed on our server. Let's just wait for it to finish installing, and then we're going to log into virtual main, and then we'll see how to do the initial setup. So this is a part that is very important. If you paused and you didn't watch this part about DNS, make sure you watch it, because this is how you'll make sure that your website is accessible on the internet. So I'm using Cloudflare, but you can use any DNS provider just in a similar way. Just add an A record for your website with your IP address, and for your panel, add the address there. If you want to be able to access this and you want to create a Let's Encrypt SSL, make sure you add www, and you add that record for that, A record for that as well. So you can also change the port. I'm going to change the port to something that is accessible via Cloudflare, and once I do that, you'll see that we can come in here and we can proxy it. For now, we won't be able to proxy any traffic through this because Cloudflare doesn't support the port that virtual main uses. So let's come back and just give it time. Okay, so you can see installation is complete. Everything is accessible. So since I've already added the DNS records for this, I can access it using this. However, if you haven't added the DNS records, you can access virtual main directly using your IP address. So I can access it using this link because I've added the DNS records on Cloudflare. So if I come back here, I can just go to that site and it should give me that warning. Okay, and this is just because this is a self-signed certificate. So I'm going to continue. So you can log in using any of the root users that you have on your server, and you do remember that we did set up a user called new user, and that's the one I'm going to log in as, new user. You can also log in using root with the credentials you got from here. So I'm going to log in as new user, and the password was, let me see. There we go. Okay, so now we are logged into virtual main. Now we are logged into virtual main, and we need to do post-installation setup. Okay, now this is just some questions that you're going to get asked so that virtual main can get set up with the best settings, the best preferences based on your server. So let's just click next to start this. Preload libraries. So for me, I'm going to choose no. Oh, it's only 40 MB, so I'm just going to click yes anyway. Run email, domain lookup server. That I can choose no or yes. If you have like 2 gigs of memory, I mean, this is very little, so I can say yes to both of them. And then if your system is going to host enable virus scanning, keep using on-demand scanner. If you're going to use this to host websites maybe, and you have enough RAM, make sure you choose this because this is very RAM intensive, but at least it helps to scan your email, and that's very important if you're hosting other people's sites on virtual main. The next step, run spam assassin. This one, of course, no. That one I'll choose no and then go next. But you can also choose yes if you're hosting other people's mail and you do have enough RAM. Run MySQL database server, absolutely, and run Postgres. No, I don't want to run Postgres. I just need MySQL. And once I do that, okay, now we can set the MySQL password. So let me just copy this. You never know where you might need this. So this is a MySQL password for the root user. I will click next. Let me put that in here. You never know when you'll use it. Copy it somewhere and save it. Okay, so what next here? MySQL is configured. MySQL configuration size. So I'll just choose small system. I'll choose a small system, but if you do have a lot of sites, especially WordPress, a big WordPress website, WooCommerce, you probably need to go with huge system. This is going to optimize MySQL for you. Okay, so for me, I'm just going to leave that, but let me choose default. I don't know which one is default, but I'll just leave it as default, and then I'll go next. For DNS zones, primary DNS, okay, I'll choose that, but I'm not using my own website. I'm not using my own name servers, so it doesn't really matter because I'm using Cloudflare. So for this, I'm just going to leave it as it is, and then I'm going to click next. And then what else remains? Password storage mode. Of course, I want my passwords to be encrypted, to be hashed. So I'm going to select that one. Make sure you read this carefully before you make a choice. Set up default virtual server. Yes, I want this to be my default virtual server, and then yes, with let's encrypt. So that's why I added the DNS record for WW and DNS records for WW panel and panel. Okay, this to make sure you add the DNS records for these two, because if you don't have those records, you won't be able to set up SSL, and you won't even be able to log in on your server like that. So let's go next and let that happen. Okay, so there we go. Everything is done. So virtual main post installation configuration is now complete. Let me just click next so that it can do the final checks, and then you can do this recheck and refresh configuration. Let's just see your system has, which is at or above that virtual main is configured to set up DNS zone, but this system is set up to use itself as a DNS server. So I don't want to use that, but it doesn't really matter because right now, even if I create a new website, I'm going to add the DNS records myself. Let me just relog this and see if we still get this not secure. So the first thing I want to do is, before I even go any further, the first thing I really want to do is I want to come here under, where is it? Let's see if it's under webmain. I need to change the port. Okay, I'll do that in the next video. So I don't want the video to be too long. But anyway, at this point, even if you add a new website, so just a brief, if you want to add a new website, all you have to do is you'll just need to come in here under virtual main and then click on create a virtual server. That's going to set up a website. So before you set up a website, make sure that you give it DNS records right there on Cloudflare. So really don't worry about the DNS thing because you're going to use Cloudflare. But as for mail, if you want to check the DNS things, the DNS settings that you need to use, is it here under server configurations? Yeah, here under DNS records. So make sure, so here you see we have one website, and that website needs to have these records. So this is why I installed bind. At least it gives us the value that we need to have. So you can just copy these values and add them to Cloudflare. Like we've already added, which one have we've added an A record, and then WW. Okay, they chose to use an A record, but I chose a CNAME. You can add FTP record. If you go there, add an A record. MX record. Have we added MX? I don't think I've added MX. I can add MX. If you want to send mail with this, if you want mail to be sent, make sure you add an MX record. Let me just do this as an example before I end the video. So I'm going to add panel 1, that MX, and the record is going to be this copy. So let's come back here, and I want to add an MX record for that subdomain. So just note that it is a subdomain. So here it will be panel 1, and we need to add mail. Priority, I saw there the priority was 5, so I'm going to save that. And so this is all you need to do. You just go into server configuration, DNS records, and you can copy the records that you need to add to Cloudflare. This is why I actually installed bind. I just decided to install everything with the virtual main for this reason. So even you can see here you have SPF records. You can just copy this and you add them there. Is there direct SPF records, or it has to be a TXT? Okay, you see you can add it as an SPF record. So just copy that and you can do that. The next thing that I want to do in the next video is I want to come here and I want to change the port. So edit virtual server. Let's see if it has SSL. So it has Nginx SSL. Okay, so it has SSL. That means that I can change the port to a supported Cloudflare port. So in the next video, let's see how to change virtual main port so that it can use a Cloudflare port, so that if people want to log into their websites, they can do so even if their websites are powered via Cloudflare. So let's see how to do that in the next. So in the last video, we installed virtual main and we saw how to set up your DNS on Cloudflare. In this video, I want to change the virtual main port so that at least if people are using it via Cloudflare, they can still access virtual main, the virtual main backend using a Cloudflare port. So first of all, let's just search which ports are supported on Cloudflare. So I'll just search for Cloudflare ports, and I can click on identify network ports compatible with Cloudflare. And you can see here we do have HTTP ports and we have HTTPS ports. So I can choose any one of these ports to use. So let me just choose 2053, and this is a port I want to change my virtual main to. So to change your port on virtual main, all you have to do is come here under webmain and then go into webmain and then webmain configuration. Even before I do that, let's go into, where is the firewall? Let's go into firewall D. I'll open that in a new tab. And I want to add that 2053 ports on accepted ports. You can see it is not available it is not available here. So the first thing I need to do is add a port. So add allowed port. So we need to allow it through our firewall first of all, and a single port. I will just add 2053. So 2053, and the network is TCP, of course. And I'm going to click there to create the port, and this is going to allow it through our firewall, and therefore it will be accessible even on the public end. Okay, so now that the port is added, you can also decide to disallow 10,000 if you don't want people to try and log into virtual main using that port. But since you've changed the port and you've added the port, even if they go there, they won't be able to log in. So let's come in here and So just a recap, go into webmain, go into usermain, webmain configuration, go into webmain configuration, and then under webmain configuration, choose ports and addresses. And then under ports and addresses, we need to change listening port. Now the listening port is currently set to that. We want to change it to 2053. And as soon as I do that, save, of course, we won't be able to log in using this port anymore. Okay. This means that the server cannot access it through that port. So what I have to do is I have to log in again, copy, and I will just paste that there. And the new port is 20. The new port is 2053. Enter. Do I have to type this every single time? So the new port is HTTPS. So you can see if somebody tries to go in there using HTTP, they will not be able to access it. Okay, and you can see now the port has been changed. So now that the port has been changed, we can come back here and we can say now Cloudflare can proxy this, and Cloudflare can proxy that as well. No, not MX, but the A record. Cloudflare can proxy that. Okay, so in this video you've seen how you can change your ports, and if you want to use Cloudflare, or you have clients and some of them will use Cloudflare, it's just a good idea to add a port that is acceptable via Cloudflare, so that even if your clients are using Cloudflare, they won't experience any problems. Now in the next video, let's see how to add WordPress, and we're going to install WordPress on this website. So let me just copy it. And in the next video, we're going to see how we can add it. We're going to see how we can add it on virtual main. So that's it for this video. Let us see how to add a website on virtual main. So right now, if I come here under virtual main, you can see we do have the default website. And what I want to do now is I want to add another website. Once you click there on virtual main, you can just click to create a virtual server that is typically a website, and the website name is that. So just remember that before you add a website, add the A record for that website. Add the A record for that website on Cloudflare if you're using Cloudflare like me. So for me, I've already added the A record with the correct IP address, and I've also added www as a CNAME record. That will enable virtual main to create SSL successfully. So you can add a description. If you want to admin password, you can generate an admin password for that. Account administration username, you can use automatic. Automatic is just going to take that, okay? Or you can use a custom name, okay? So it's probably better to just use a custom name. Account plan, default plan, that's the only one we have. Server configs, you can set up server config somewhere here, but I haven't done any of that, so I don't really mind for that. Advanced options here, all of this, we leave them as they are. Enable SSL, all this, enable all of this. These ones I will also leave them as they are, and then I will click on create server. So let it set up everything for us. So I saw something here like error 525, and I hope that that is not going to affect my website in any way. So let me just come here, and so this is a website. We've already added the DNS records. So let's just go and see if it's already been set up. So you can see the website has been set up. We can install WordPress on it. So if you want to add another website, it's just like that, okay? On Cloudflare, you want to add another website, just click there, add a site. Maybe you have another site. Click there, add the name of the site. Let me open this. Can I open this in a new tab? Okay, I can't. Let me say you have an example, a website like examplec.com. And then you can click there to add site. And then you'll just choose the free plan and then continue. and then it's going to scan for the DNS records. And then once it scans the records, it's going to tell you that you need to go to wherever your domain is being hosted, the name, the provider of your domain. If you bought it from GoDaddy, Namecheap, Cloudflare is going to give you certain name servers. Take those name servers and then use those name servers. Remove the name servers that are currently on your site. So this website probably doesn't exist. I don't know if it exists. But if it existed, we wouldn't have to scan it for this long. So let me just come back to the one we were working with. But that's pretty much it. Once you do that, just click there on DNS. Once the website, you've already gone to your domain provider and you've changed the name servers to what Cloudflare has given you, then you can come here under DNS records and start adding these DNS records. Make sure you add all the DNS records as I showed you in the last video. You can come under, is it here under server configurations? Just go to your DNS records. And if you come to your DNS records for this website, you can see that these are the records you can add on the other end. Mail, you can add a mail, a record, and this is going to ensure that mail is getting sent. If you don't add these records, mail will not get sent. Okay, you can see it even tells you the type of record it is. You can add FTP, a record. On the other side, you can add the mail record and as an a record at the IP address and so on and so on. Okay, SPF record. Just come here, click there, add a record. And as I said, I was going to be using, I was to use Cloudflare for this. If you want to use your own website as your own name servers, it's also possible. You can do that using virtual main, but I'm not going to go into that. Now, let's forget about that. Now we've set up our site. Now the next thing is, let's see how we can install WordPress on it. So I'm going to click there on install scripts. You can install scripts, you can install WordPress, or you can even, you can even import a WordPress website. If you already have a site, maybe you're moving to virtual main from a different place. Just go to your WordPress website and then install the duplicator plugin, duplicate your website, and then come into the file manager. And then once you're inside of the file manager, once you're here on the public HTML, just upload your duplicated website and then run the installation file. You know how to use the duplicator plugin. If you don't, just find out how. And then once you run it, you can move your website here. I don't need to deal with that right now. So the first thing I want to do here is install WordPress. So if you're starting as afresh, you can just click there on WordPress. Not click, you check it, and then show install options. Come in here and change any settings that you want to change. Database for the WordPress, you can do that here. You can even create a database already. If you come here under virtual main, there is database, edit databases. You can come here under databases and you can create a new database. You can delete a database. If you want to create a new database completely, you can create a database. The username for your database is that. You can change it there. The password there, you can generate a new one, change the password there. So if you forget any details about your database, just come there under edit database. Where is it? There, edit database. Make sure you select the correct website there. And then you can change the WordPress details, the database details. So for me, I really don't want to do anything here. I don't want to change any of these details. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come there, and you can install WordPress in a directory, in a subdirectory, which is actually the recommended way by some people. But I'm going to install it under public HTML. I will install it there. Let's just install our WordPress. Are you sure you want to install WordPress? Of course I want to install WordPress. There we go. So our WordPress is installed. So let's just visit the front end of our site to see if WordPress is actually installed. There we go. So you see it just brought the files. It still wants us to continue with the installation ourselves. So site title, let's just call it sample. Username sample. and password sample. Confirm use of a weak password, yes, and then search engine visibility, discourage. Of course, if your website is live, you want to encourage that, just leave that unchecked. And then I'm going to install WordPress. Now everything has already been set up, like the WP config file has already been set up by virtual main, so I don't really need to do anything. So I can log into my site, log in, and now we definitely do have an issue. So if you did install your WordPress under a folder, which is actually something that I would recommend you do, you install it under a folder, come here under settings, and then go into, is it under general settings? Yeah, here under general settings, your WordPress address, let's say you installed it under WP. If you come here, you'll find that your website is under WP, and this one is probably also under WP. So what you'll need to do is the WordPress address. This is where the WordPress files will be. So that, make sure you remove that. That's the first step. And don't save it first. Just leave it like that. Don't save it first. First of all, go into virtual main. And before even going to virtual main, I need to show you what I'm going to do to that side on that end. So if I come here under Hello World, our post, you can see, look at that. We don't want this, okay? This is a problem that comes with Nginx, and we definitely don't want that. So we can set that up, and let's also go here under permalinks. So if you come here under permalinks, okay, we need to change it to that post name. So if I save it to the post name, you'll see that you're going to get a 404. Hello world, we're going to get a 404 error. So if you try to go there, it's going to give us a 404 error, right? That's what we want. But it's giving us a 404 error. So what I need to do is I need to go into webmain. So let's go here under webmain, and we need to change something. We need to add this into our Nginx configuration. So this is something that you need to do, okay? So add that into Nginx configuration. Copy, and I will, where do I need to go? Do we go under server, Nginx configuration? Can you see Nginx web server? Let's go there under servers, Nginx web server, and then edit configuration files. And then we need to choose the one for our site, and we want to choose the configuration for this. And we just need to add it under this location. This is just another location on Nginx, and this is the one that's going to tell Nginx that now you don't need to bring people this 404 nonsense. And that is also going to tell. So something that you need to remember, if you changed the location where your files are, okay? Where was it? Settings, permalinks, not permalinks, general settings. If you change that and your files are probably under, let's say they were under a folder called WP, okay? So the site address will just remain as it is, as your website, and then the WordPress address will be the location with the folder of your WordPress files. So if you did change that here under this Nginx configuration, here before index.php, make sure you add WP so that Nginx can know where to go, okay? And then you will also need to copy the index.php from your file manager. So if you know how to install WordPress in a directory, I don't need to tell you this. If you don't know, then just avoid it. But that's just something I wanted to tell you. If you install it in a subdirectory, make sure you add the subdirectory there. Mine is not installed in a subdirectory, so I'm just going to save and close. And then once I save and close, I'm going to come here and apply Nginx configuration. So try not to change any other configurations because you may mess up your site if you don't know what you're doing. So once I do that, if I try to come here, I should get a 404. But the good thing is, if I go back to my home page, my permalinks should be working fine, and this is what you want. Okay, so that's the only thing you need to do if you install WordPress. Now if you want to add another WordPress website, it's just that simple. Just come here under virtual main, then add a virtual server, create a virtual server, and create the website. And even before you create the website, this is very important. Before you create the website, come here under your DNS and make sure that you add the DNS records for the website. Okay, if you want to use a different website, you can choose the website here. Just click there, add a site on Cloudflare, and once you add it, add the DNS records. The basic DNS records that you need to add when you're adding the website on virtual main, the basic records, the basic ones are the www and the A record. The A record for that domain. Okay, just add an A record with the IP address and a WWC name. Okay, those are the basic ones that you need to add. As soon as you add those, you can just come here and SSL will be created. If your DNS records don't have www and do not have this A record, you will not be able to create SSL. Let's Encrypt is not going to work. So that's just something that I wanted to tell you. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. If there's anything else that you need to change, feel free to look at the virtual main documentation. There are lots of helps. There are lots of help guides from other people. There are also lots of questions and answers on the forum. And I hope this will help you. If you want to move to Nginx and PHPMyAdmin, you can use virtual main for that. So if you want to install other sites, maybe Magento, PrestaShop, it's just the same process. Just install, you can upload the website. I've shown you how you can edit the database. Now maybe the next thing that you may need to do is install PHPMyAdmin so that you can import databases into your website. So if that's something that you want to do, then you can just come here. Let's say maybe you want to install PHPMyAdmin. Let's see in the next video, let's see how you can install PHPMyAdmin, and then we see how you can manage your databases on PHPMyAdmin, and that will be the last video in this tutorial. So this is the last video in this virtual main tutorial, and in this last video, let's just see how you can install PHPMyAdmin. It just came up as a result of installing WordPress in the last video. I will choose my website here, just here under virtual main. I will choose panel 1. That is a main website for my virtual main, and I want to install virtual main on that. I want to install PHPMyAdmin on that. So I'll just come here under install scripts. I want to install PHPMyAdmin. Show installation options. Okay, so you can see that it's telling me that it cannot be installed because this website does not have a database. So I'm going to go into edit virtual server. Make sure you have it selected there, edit virtual server. And you can see MySQL is not enabled for this. So I'm going to enable MySQL, and then I'm going to save. MySQL has been created for that, and that's what we wanted. Now the next step is for me to go into that website again. Okay, it's already selected, so I'm just going to go into install scripts again, and I'm going to try and install PHPMyAdmin. There we go, and I will show install options, and this time around it should be able to work without any warnings. So you can choose all the options that you want to choose. Automatically log into MySQL. Of course not, you want to be able to enter a password, but if you don't mind, you can always automatically log into MySQL using PHPMyAdmin. That's something you don't want to do, but if you don't care, then choose no. Choose yes, I mean. Database to manage all databases, indeed, and install. You can install it at the top level, or you can install it in a folder. Okay, so for me, I'm going to install it in a folder, and I'm just going to call this folder Z. So instead of going to /PHPMyAdmin, I'll just go into /Z, and that's going to take me to PHPMyAdmin. And then I will install now. All right, there we go. Now let's see if I go to, I don't know if I can access it from here. Let's try javascriptbear.com. Copy. And remember, I installed it under Z. And you can see if I go to that /Z, I'm able to access it. Let's see for the other website that I created, if I can also access it. javascriptbear.com/Z. Go. Okay, I can't access it from there. I have to access it from this end. Add in the username and the password. And where do you get the username and the password? I showed you that in the last video. You just come in here under edit databases for the website that you want to work with. If you want to see the database users for that, you can click there and select the correct website, click on edit databases, and you can see the usernames. You can change a username, you can change the passwords as well. Okay, and you can use that to log in to MySQL, to log into PHPMyAdmin, okay. That's pretty much it for this video. And at some point, you're probably going to get an error whereby you cannot import a database because of some limit. Now, if that happens, let me give you the fix for that. Let me just do an example to show you what I mean. Let's say that I try to log into, so the username is that. You can change the username and save. Just change it and save, and the username will be saved. So that's the username, and then the database password, you can just click there under passwords, and you can copy the password. This is for the wrong one. We want the one for this website. Make sure you know which website you're working with. So I'm going to copy that, and then I want to log into PHPMyAdmin to administer my database. And you can see here, do I have a database inside there? Okay, I do have one database. It doesn't have any tables. Let's say that I try to import a database here. So let me click on import, and there's an error that usually happens. So let's say that I try to import a database. Let me select this database. I hope it's big enough. It's big enough to give me that problem. Okay, so if you get this error for 13, this is just an Nginx thing. Okay, you can fix it quite easily. Let me just show you how you can do that. Now, the default packet size in Nginx is 1 MB. Okay, so if you try to upload something that is more than 1 MB, you're going to get that for 13 error. So we can just copy this, and for me, I've put it at 50, but you can do, let's just do something like 20 MB. So if your database is larger, make sure you increase this. So I'm going to copy that client max body size 20, and then let's go back to Nginx. And I will just come here under server configurations, servers, and I will go into Nginx web server, and I will go into edit configuration files, and I want to import it for, which was that. I want to import it for that. So what I can do is, you can see it's not even listed here. It's not even here, but I can just add it after this. Before the location, you can just add the client max body size tab, and then you can save and close, and then apply the Nginx configuration by restarting Nginx. And now if we come back here, let's wait for Nginx to restart. And I can try to do this again. Let us try to import the database one more time, right there. And now the database has been successfully imported. So if I come here, you'll see that it has all the tables that we had. So the database has been successfully imported, and that's what we needed to do. So if you need to import a database into your website, maybe you're moving a new website, you can now do it. Okay, just make sure that you increase the packet size as I've shown you in that configuration file. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this video, for this tutorial as well. You've seen how you can set up Nginx, how you can set up virtual main and use it to host other websites, to host your websites. So I've shown you an example with WordPress, but you can use any script that you want to use, any PHP script that you want to host with Nginx. You can do that. Just make sure that you find the Nginx configuration files for that platform so that you don't get any errors. Like for WordPress, you saw how to remove the 404 errors if you want to work with the WordPress pretty permalinks. So every platform has them. Okay, Nginx, you'll always find a solution for them. Like if you're using Magento, you'll find some Nginx configuration that you can just add on your Nginx configuration file, and then your Magento will work well, whether it's Joomla, whichever platform you're using. Don't be worried, there are always solutions online. So if you don't like to use Apache, especially on a low VPS, I'm telling you, if you're using Apache on a server with less than 4 GB of RAM, then I don't know what you're thinking. You should definitely just switch to Nginx, because Nginx is much more performance oriented. It will serve multiple people using the same resources. Okay, so that's just one of the reasons why I love to use Nginx, because it is resource friendly. You don't need to use a huge VPS or a huge dedicated server. If you're running Nginx, you can use Nginx with small resources, 1 GB RAM, 2 GB RAM. It's going to work out fine. Your website, even if it serves thousands of people, you will not get timeout errors like you would get with Apache. With Apache, you'll get lots of 500 server errors. So do yourself a favor and just learn more about Nginx and get into the Nginx world, because it is a much more resource-friendly web server. I know Apache is easier to use because of HT access, but yeah, you can do the same things with Nginx configuration files. So just get into that mindset. Right, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial. If you do have any questions, feel free to let me know. Hi, and welcome to this video. In this video, you're going to see how to deploy a DigitalOcean droplet and install CyberPanel. Let's go to the documentation, install CyberPanel. I'll click there on installing CyberPanel. You can find how to install CyberPanel. I will put the link in the description so you don't have to search for it. And the supported operating systems: Ubuntu 18.04, Ubuntu 20.04, Alma Linux 8, Alma Linux 9, and Ubuntu 22.04, and Cloud Linux 8. 1 GB RAM, 10 GB of disk space, that is the recommended minimum, but I'd recommend at least you go with 2 GB of RAM. I'm going to install Ubuntu 22.04 and then install CyberPanel. The next thing, let's deploy our server on DigitalOcean. So I'm going to go to DigitalOcean and log in. If you don't have an account, you can use my link, and that is going to give you $200 free credit to try DigitalOcean. And you see, if you follow the link, it's going to give you $200 free credit of DigitalOcean. That is if your account is new. Now I can go ahead and create the droplet. So I'm going to create a droplet. I will choose London data center there. The image, I will go with Ubuntu, but I want Ubuntu 22.04. Choose the type of server you want. I'm going to go with a basic shared CPU server, and I want to use a premium Intel server. And as I said, I want to go with 2 GB, so I would advise you as well to try 2 GB instead of the 1 GB. I'm going to go with that. If you need additional storage, you can add a volume, but this is something you can add later once your server is deployed. And then backups, you can enable automated backups. So if you click there, you can enable weekly backups, and that's going to be 20% of your droplet for the weekly backups, and then for the daily backups is 30% of the droplet. So select yours there. I'm going to select the daily backup. Make sure you have a backup recovery plan. This is very helpful. Anything can go wrong at any time. So make sure you have that selected, and I would go with the daily backups. You can select a time of day for the backup to take place. And then choose authentication method. If you don't have an SSH key, then you can set up a password. You'd have to write your password there and make sure you remember the password, because if you forget it, you won't be able to log into your server with that password because it won't be sent to you. In my case, I want to use an SSH key, and if you don't know how to do this, I do have a different video that shows you how to deploy a DigitalOcean droplet with an SSH key. In that video, I generate an SSH key and then add it to DigitalOcean and then go through this step of deploying a droplet. and this is the one you should go with. So if you don't know how to do that, make sure you watch that video. I will add it in the description as well. So I'm going to select that key, and then we recommend these options. Add metrics. This is free, of course. Enable that. I'm not going to use a managed database because Cyberpanel comes with a database, and I can use that. And then finalize the details. One droplet, host name. Host name, make sure you give it a name that is a fully qualified domain name. So here I'm just going to do a sample, and I will call it sample.bizanosa.com. And then you can add a tag and then choose the project. I will leave it in the project. So my server per month is $16, but plus backup, it becomes $20 per month. And then I can create droplets. I'm using a Linux laptop, but if you're on Windows, you can still follow along with me. Just go to your Google search and search for Git, install Git. And then here under downloads, go and install Git for Windows. Click there on Windows, download the portable one, but I'll just install it. If you are always using it, just install the standalone installer, and then open Git Bash and follow along with me as I type my commands. There's no excuse for you why you can't follow along. Whether you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux, you can still follow along without any problem. So let's log into the server. So I'm just going to copy the IP, and I will come back to my terminal. I will log into my server SSH, and the user is root at my IP, Control-Shift-V. If you're using Git Bash, I don't know that Control-Shift-V works. You'd need to use Shift-Insert to paste. SSH root, and then I want to log in with my private key. So the identity of my key. Type yes to confirm that you want to log into this server and add it to your known hosts file. Enter. All right, just like that, I'm now logged into my Ubuntu server. The first thing I can do is update the server. As a force of habit, I'm using sudo, but you don't need to use it here. So here you can install Cyberpanel or Cyberpanel Enterprise. The Enterprise version will use Lightspeed. So if you want to install Lightspeed, first of all, you'll need to go to the Lightspeed website and get yourself a license. If your server is 2 GB and below, you can run Lightspeed Enterprise free version, and that will work with only one website. So if you only have one website to run, I would actually recommend that you go with Cyberpanel Enterprise. But if you will be adding more websites, then I'd suggest you just go with the Lightspeed open source, open Lightspeed, and that comes with this Cyberpanel. Once the updates are complete, reboot the Ubuntu server. You can just do sudo reboot to reboot, or you can also reboot on the DigitalOcean droplet interface. If you come here, you can click on it, and then under power, you can power cycle to restart. Make sure you restart your server before you start installing Cyberpanel. So for Ubuntu, sudo apt update, I've already updated the server, and then run the installation script. So I'm running this as the root user, but if you're not the root user, make sure you switch to the root shell by doing sudo su that. So I'm just going to copy that. And before I even run this, let me just use Tmax. I will open Tmax because this installation might fail, and with Tmax, I can just reconnect to the session and see if I can continue the session. Control-Shift-V to paste the script. Do you want to install Cyberpanel? Yes, I want to install Cyberpanel. So I will press 1 and then enter. This is a part where you choose whether you want to install Cyberpanel or Cyberpanel Enterprise. If you want the Enterprise version, you're going to select number 2, and then you'll need to enter the license key for Lightspeed. Open Lightspeed is free for as many websites as you need to run on it. So I'm just going to go with 1 and then enter. Install full service for Cyberpanel. Yes. Enter. Do you want to set up remote MySQL? This will skip installation of local MySQL. So default is no. and you can always tell the default by which one is capital. And you can see N is capitalized. So I'm going to press enter, and that will use the local MySQL. Press enter to continue with the latest version, or you can select a specific version. I'm going to press enter to go with the latest version. Do you wish to install Memcached? Yes. Do you wish to install Redis? Yes. Would you like to set up Watchdog? Yes. Then let it continue. So I'm just going to pause, and then if there is anything that is needed of me, that is when I will come back. That is when I will come back and resume recording. So I'm just going to pause for now. Well, finally, after waiting for like 5 years, the installation is complete and you can restart your server. I'm just going to press enter. The installation time took 17 minutes. You can save the details for your server. So to log into your server, to log into CyberPanel, just copy that link. Advanced, continue, and I will copy the password. Come back, password, enter the password, sign in. You have now installed CyberPanel. Let's say I want to add a website and I want to add a sample WordPress website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the domain from here, and this is on Cloudflare. What I've done is I've just given it the bare minimum DNS records, and that is the A record that points to my server, and this is a server where CyberPanel is installed, and I've also added www that points to the domain as a CNAME. So that is the bare minimum to get your domain to show up on the browser, on the internet. So I'm just going to come back here, and let's say I want to add a website. So just here on this, you can choose to add a website, but the option is also here. Here under websites, you can create a website. I'll just use default. You can create packages and set them up. If you want to set up packages, maybe give minimum disk space, the number of websites that can be installed. You can come here under packages, create a package right there. Select the owner. So you can also add users. So just remember that if you're using Lightspeed Enterprise, you probably won't be able to create many users if you're using the free one. So you can create a new user. Let's just create a new user here. And I want that user to own that website. I don't want the admin user to own the website. User details. So SSL has not been issued. Let me just click there on issue SSL. So it says SSL has been issued. Let's come back, reload, see if that's fixed it. If you wanted to host WordPress, there you go. If you want to learn how to use CyberPanel, there's a tutorial I did 3-4 years ago. I think it's still relevant. I'll link to the playlist below. It is a complete CyberPanel tutorial teaching you about some of these things. So just as a way to end the video, there are lots of open source projects that need support from us. So if you're using something for free, sometimes it's just good to support the project. Go to CyberPanel, look at add-ons. If there's anything you can purchase from them, go ahead and buy it. You know, maybe the creator of this project is probably struggling financially. You never know, man. Just find something you can buy here. I don't know whether they still have the support. There used to be support. I don't know if they still have that support, but just come here. Maybe you can buy that WordPress manager. You can buy at one-time price or yearly price or monthly price. Just go ahead and support these open source projects, because if we don't, it is guaranteed all of them will fail. Think about that. If there's anything you're going to use, you can buy it yearly, 54 yearly, WordPress manager 54 yearly. Maybe you're making money from your websites. You can just go ahead and buy the add-ons, or you can get all the add-ons for one-time fee of $169. All these add-ons will be available to you at that. I don't know whether they did away with the support, but support would also be a nice way to support them. All right, that's it for this video. In this video, just to summarize, you've seen how to set up your droplet. You've seen how to deploy a DigitalOcean droplet, then install Cyberpanel. And just as a sample, we've seen how you can install a WordPress website on it. Before I end, I'm just going to come in here. Before ending the video, I'm just going to come here and destroy on my droplet, and I will destroy this droplet. Destroy. And that should end the tutorial. If you have a question, feel free to let me know. I will see how to assist you. That's it for this video. Until next time. Let's get started with this basic server security for your cPanel server. These are things you're going to do on the SSH for your server. First thing, we're going to set up the firewall. A firewall on your operating system is very important. This is probably the most important security thing for you on your cPanel server. So in this case, I'm going to use NF tables, and I'm just going to base my example based off of the NF tables configuration wiki example, which is here. So I've already edited a sample file that you can just copy and use. So I've added all the cPanel ports. You can actually separate things. If you wanted to, you can separate this into its own port, like I've done there. So if there is any port that you're sure you will usually disable, you can just put it on its own like that instead of putting them together. So for example, if you wanted to maybe make 2087 its own port, we can just copy that, and I will remove all these others. And then of course, remove it from there. So you can do the same for any ports that you're sure you will be disabling them at some point, and for you to get back into your server, you have to come to SSH and enable them. You can put them on their own, and if you need to enable and if you need to disable the port, you'll just comment out that line. You'll just comment out the port that you want to disable momentarily. That's a quick tip for you there. If you need to disable any port, if you want to disable all the cPanel ports, that is for accessing WHM and cPanel, you can comment that out as well. And when you need to come back to the server, you can uncomment it, save and restart NF tables. And we're going to see how to do that in a moment. Depending on the distro you're using, you will be able to follow along with me. In this case, I'm using Alma Linux. So since I'm using Alma Linux, then if you're on CentOS, you're on Rocky Linux, you're on Cloud Linux, you'll be able to follow along because you can use DNF. So the only part we'll be using DNF, I believe, is there and there if you need to install NF tables. Probably it is already installed. First thing, when you want to use NF tables and you only want to use NF tables, then just disable all these other firewalls. For example, firewall D, I will disable it, and then IP tables as well, and then remove IP tables. If you are following along on Ubuntu, you can do apt purge -y, and I hope the package names are the same, but you can Google that. So let me first of all do this. Copy. Okay, I'm not logged into the server. Let me first log in. Copy, Control-Shift-V, or rather Control-A, SSH into this user. So right now we're logging in with the password, but we're going to disable password authentication at some point. Control-Shift-V, Control-L. So let's see. So I logged into this server probably 10 minutes ago, and you can already see that I have 18 failed login attempts. So you can see why it's important to do this basic cPanel server security on your SSH. And once I do all this, you'll see that every time you log in, the number will probably be 0 or maybe just 1 from a failed login from you. But this is important. So let's continue. The first step is to disable all these firewalls and uninstall them. So I've already done this. I don't I've already removed all these firewalls, but let me just run it here. Control L, Control Shift V. All right, so you can see all of these are no match. That means they don't exist. I've removed all of them. There's nothing to do. But in your case, you probably have them. And if you're on Ubuntu as well, remember to remove UFW. So I didn't add UFW there, but also UFW, you need to add it. So just copy the same thing and add UFW, and here as well add UFW and remove it, because we only want to use NF tables. Then let's install NF tables. If you're on Ubuntu, you can do apt install. Here, let me just do this. I'm on Alma Linux 9. So Control Shift V, DNF install. So it's already installed. We don't need to do anything. I'm just going to copy this, enable and restart. Control Shift V. All right, so this means it's already enabled and restarted on my Alma Linux server. So the next thing is to add the configuration files. All right, the next thing is to add this configuration file, and this is going to allow the specific ports that you want to allow. I have the custom SSH port there. You can edit it. I'm just allowing it in advance, and then we're going to add it as our SSH port later on, but it's already there. So once we allow it in SSH and restart SSH, it will already be allowed in your firewall. And then it allows all these other ports. If there's any port you want to add, you can always come in there, comma, and then add whichever port you want to add, right? So I'm just going to delete that. And I've also shown you if you want to separate any port to its own line so that you can enable it and disable it at your own will, then you can do so by just putting it in its own line, like I did for 2087. So let's come back here, and we've enabled NF tables. Here in enabling NF tables, you might probably experience an error, and this is something I've experienced in other servers, and the error will probably be that X tables is not supported or something like that. And that is usually because you don't have a configuration file for NF tables. So let's come here and let's see how to figure out if you're going to add your NF tables here. So you can add your NF tables to this, but it's always a good idea to use the default configuration file that is loaded by CMD. And in most distros, almost every distro I've come across, usually they load the default in this file, etc nftables.conf. And if this is a case for you, you can simply open that file and then paste all of this in there. But how do you figure out which is the default file that is being loaded on your Linux distro? You can do so by coming to, before I do that, I want to show you, I have added some aliases here that will save me time. So instead of typing sudo systemctl disable enable systemctl status, I'm just going to type sys, and that's going to save me time. With that in mind, systemctl status NF tables will usually tell you which is the default configuration file for NF tables. So if you go here, and in my case, you can see by default, this is what is being loaded. Okay. The service file is that. So how can we use this service file to figure out which is the default configuration file where we can add our rules? Just copy that, and I can do cut. I want to read the content of that loaded CMD file. Control Shift C, Control Shift V to paste, to copy and paste. And then we can come down here, and you can see here under exec start, right? NFT is going to start a specific file here. So the file that NFT is starting is this. By all standards, this is a default configuration file, but what I need to do is to go into this file and confirm if that is the case. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to cut that file. I want to see the content. Control Shift C, Control Shift V, enter. So it starts here. So what you can see here is that this is a file that is commented out. Like literally, it has nothing inside of it. If you read the contents of the file, it's going to tell you uncomment the include statement here to load the default config sample. All right. So the default config sample you can see is that default config sample is this file. So this means that I will edit this file and then uncomment this, and I will add my rules there. Or you can even come in and paste all your rules in this file. But probably you don't want to do that, and you should just do it the way that I'm doing it. On Alma Linux, you uncomment this, and then you add your configuration files in that file. All right. So if you're on a different distro, if you come here under exec start, you're probably going to see etc nftables conf. This one here. In other distros, this is a file that will be loaded on the systemd file, service file. So if this is a file that has been loaded here and here as well, then just do vi etc config and then paste your content, and then paste all these configuration files inside of that file, right? But in this case, this is not the situation. What I can do is edit this. So I'll do Control L to clear the screen, Control A to go to the beginning of the line, and then I will do VI. I'm using Vim to edit, and uncomment this line. I'll just delete the pound sign at the beginning to uncomment it, and then I will go into this file and add these configuration files. So let's do escape and then Shift ZZ to save that file. And we need to go to that file. I will just do VI. I want to edit that file. Control Shift C, Control Shift V to edit that main NFT file. So you can see here, this is the default file that you can enable, and it has some things that are allowed here, but we don't care for all this. So what we're going to do is, in fact, even before editing it, at least let me save it. Control Shift ZQ, Shift ZQ to get out of that, and I want to back it up. Control Shift C, Control Shift V to paste dot back, Control A to go to the beginning of the line, and I'm just going to CP to copy it. So at least I have a backup of it in case of any reason why I would need the default. I can go back to the default file. So for now, I'm just going to edit that, and I can type 1000 dd to delete everything in that line. That's like delete the next 1000 lines, just so it can delete everything in that file. So I'm going to copy all of that, the sample NFT, and Control Shift V. I will paste all of it here. If you need to edit anything, you can always come in here and edit, and this is just based on the sample which is here on the nftables wiki. So we've allowed all the ports for WHM and cPanel. So here I don't see UDP. Let me see. UDP. Okay, this one. This should be UDP. I press I to go into edit mode, UDP. That is for DNS. If you're using your server for DNS, you need to allow UDP. So I've rebooted the server. So after rebooting the server, you can just log back in. All right. Now that I can log in, it means that I didn't get locked out by my firewall. NFT list rule set. There you go. Your firewall is working, and now you can continue to do other things. So now that the firewall is working, let's continue with the other things. And what we're going to do next is set up a new user, and then we'll generate an SSH key on the computer, add it to the server, test if the new user can log in with that private key. We're going to disable password authentication, root login, and we're going to change the port. So the port that you're using here, make sure it is the same port that you've allowed here. Okay, so I've added it there for you. You can just change it to whichever port you want to use for SSH. And then finally, we're going to install CrowdSec. So instead of using fail to ban, I'd rather CrowdSec. So I'm just going to come here and we can search for CrowdSec, a free, helpful, important, necessary tool for security. So you can read more about CrowdSec on the CrowdSec website. It blocks IPs that try to scan your server, try to scan if there are any loopholes with previous CVEs, that is insecurity loopholes, maybe for Apache, Nginx, WordPress, lots and lots of different software, even PHP. Attackers might try to scan your server and see if there are loopholes like that, and CrowdSec will block them. So that's the last thing we'll do. So let's start with the first one, create a new user. So here, just add a user, give the user a name, and then set a password for the user, and then you add the user to the wheel group so that they can use sudo. Just remember, I'm on Alma Linux, so that's why we're adding it to the wheel group. If you're on Ubuntu, you're going to need to add it to the sudo group. I'll just copy the first two. So change the username to what you prefer. Control L, Control Shift V. Enter a password for the user. I'll copy that. Control Shift V, Control Shift V. All right. So our new user has been created. Now let's add it to the wheel group so that they can have the sudo privileges needed to administer the server. Copy, Control Shift V, enter. So the moment of truth, we need to first of all test if we can log into the server with that user and run sudo. So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to copy the username from there. You can open a new terminal window to confirm that you can log in. Control Shift T to open a new terminal window. Control Shift V to paste. Control A to go to the beginning of the line, SSH. Control Shift V. All right, so we're logged in. Let's confirm if we can do sudo dnf update. Enter the sudo password, the password for the user. Control Shift V. There we go. There's nothing to do. You can try to install something. Let me do sudo dnf install tmax. You can use sudo without any problem. So from now on, you can actually continue using the new user with sudo instead of using the root user. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue using the new user, and I can just close the root user and continue with my new user, since they already have the sudo privileges needed to administer the server and do everything else that I need to do on this list. So we've set up the user. That is done. The next step, let's generate an SSH key. This you have to do on your local computer. Control Shift T, and do that on your local computer, not on the server. So we're going to make a directory in the SSH directory, and you can call it whatever you want. We want to store our keys in that directory. Give it a name that at least you can recall or you can figure out which server it is for on my local computer. All right. And then I will generate a key, and the key I'm going to generate is ed25519 key, and the file name for the key will be that. So it will be stored in the folder that I've just created, and the key will be called that. The public and the private key will be called that. So I'm just going to copy that to generate the key. Ctrl+Shift+V to paste it. And if you want to add a passphrase, you can add a passphrase. In this example, I'm going to add a passphrase because it is also another important security feature for your key if you're going to use it to log in. So I'm just going to add a passphrase for my key. Confirm the passphrase. So every time you use the key, you have to enter the passphrase. All right, there we go. Our keys have been generated. There are the two keys, the public key and the private key. So the public key is the one that we're going to add onto the server for this user. So when you're adding it, add it for the user that you just created. So copy the key to the server and make sure you're adding the .pub key. Okay, .pub, that is a public key that you need to add to the server. So we are still doing this offline. We are not on the server. Ctrl+Shift+C. Let me get the password for this user because I'm going to need it in a moment. Copy. Enter the password for that user. There you go. The SSH key, the private key, the public key has now been added for the new user that you set up. So let's try to log in. Let's log in. So to log in, you'll just do SSH, the user and the IP, and then the identity of the key, and then the location for the private key. When you're logging in, make sure you're logging in with the private key. So copy and Ctrl+Shift+V, enter. Remember, I set up a passphrase for my key. So every time I need to log in, I will enter the passphrase for the key. Make sure it's something that you can remember, because if you forget it, you will lose access to your server. You will lose access to your server. So I will enter mine. There we go. We're logged in. If you don't want to enter the passphrase, you can generate your key without a passphrase. Now that we've ascertained that we can log in with our SSH key, I'm going to disable password authentication, the root user from logging in, and change the SSH port. So I can do that simply by creating my own SSH configuration file. This is actually my preferred way, and I think it should be the recommended way for editing your SSH configuration. Put your configurations in your own file in the SSH config-d. If you go into this directory, you'll see that Cloud Init and even cPanel has added some of their configurations in there. So let's come in here. Let's do an ls of that directory. Ctrl+Shift+V. Okay, permission denied. So I need my password for sudo. Copy. Ctrl+Shift+V. All right. So when you do that, let me do it in a cleaner way. ls-lh ls-lh. All right, so you'll see inside of that directory, cPanel has their configuration file, Cloud Init, Red Hat as their configuration file. So we're going to see what's inside of each of those. So actually inside here, I forgot. Here you need to add .conf. It should be .conf. So let's just do Control Z, and then I'm going to select that, Control D to edit them all at once, and I'll do .conf. It's a good thing I opened all this because you can see they all have .conf. So create your own configuration file. Let's look at the content of each of this. The first one is the cPanel one. So we're just going to cut, Control delete, Control delete, Control delete, and I want to cut, and then Control E to go to the end of the line on my terminal here. And then I want to see the contents of, and most importantly, make sure you have sudo. We are no longer the root, so let's use sudo. Control Shift C, Control Shift V, enter, and you can see this is what is inside of that file. Let's go to the next one. It's not auto-completing. Let me just copy it. Control Shift C, Control Shift V. So here, okay, this is one that I will need to remove because you can see the password authentication has been set to yes, and we need to set this one to no. So let me just delete that right away. We don't need it. It's not going to harm anything. RM. Just remove it. Cannot remove. I need sudo. I keep forgetting. I need sudo. I am no longer the root user. Let's look at the last one and see if it's going to affect our configuration file in any way. 50 Red Hat. Control Shift C, Control Shift V, enter. Oh, we are not removing, we are doing cut. Okay, we're doing cut. Control Shift V. Okay, this is not going to affect our configuration. So Control L to clear the screen. We can continue. We're going to create our configuration file, and then actually I don't need this. We're going to create our configuration file, and then this is going to get added to that file. Okay, it's going to get added in a new line. Password authentication is going to be set to no, and then in a new line, permit root login is going to get set to no, and all of that will be appended to the file that we've just created. And then eventually we're going to change the permissions for that file so that it is owned by the root user only. So I can copy all of this in one go. Copy, Control Shift V, enter. All right, so let's look at the file and confirm that it was actually created and our configuration files are in there. So I'm going to use Vim to open it. Control Shift C, Control Shift V. Permission denied, Shift ZQ. I keep forgetting. Sudo must be there. All right, so you can see there is a file and there is some space at the top. Let me see why there is a space here. So I can just press DD to delete the space at the top. But most importantly, password authentication has been set to no. Permit root login has been set to no. And our new port is that. So if you're going to change your port, make sure you change your port here. And you also change it in the NF tables configuration. So Shift ZZ to close that. The reason why we have the first line is because of this. Is because of the new line at the beginning. So I can actually remove that so that it can start at the very top of the line for you. Control S. We can actually delete it and test it to make sure. I want to give you something that is working. Sudo RM to remove it. That's the configuration file that I've just created. And we can create it again. copy everything, Control Shift V, enter, and let's look at it. All right, now it's created without the line at the top, without the empty line at the top. So Shift ZQ, get out of that, Control L, and then now let's restart SSH. You can restart SSH with sudo systemctl restart sshd, but I can just use sit sshd. All right. Okay, so I can't use it here because I have not added the aliases here. So you can copy the alias from the other side and add them to bash, but that is not important to this tutorial for now. So let me just restart it with this, copy, Control Shift V, enter, and now Control Shift T, open a new terminal to make sure that the changes we've made are successful. So I'm going to copy that. First of all, let's confirm if we can log in. If we can log in with a password. So SSH, Control Shift V. All right, so you can see connection refused. So this is going to test the port, and you can see connection was refused on port 22. Let's log in with the new port, SSH dash P. Was it 6022? All right, so you can see now we are getting a different error, and now permission denied. You need a public key. You can't log in with a password. All right, so we've confirmed two things. You cannot log in with port 22, and you cannot log in with a password. If every time you see that, just know that you need to enter a public key to log in. So let's log in with our public key and our new port. Did I add that here for you? Let me see. Disable, restart. Let me add there how to log in. How to log in with SSH key and port. At the very top, I believe I logged in with the key. SSH, I logged in with the key. There we go. Copy. Control V. So SSH, the user, the IP, identity of the key, and most importantly, add the port. So the port is 6022. So I'm just going to copy that. Come this side, Control Shift V, enter, and enter the passphrase if you added a passphrase to your key. There you go. Now you're logged in. You can try sudo dnf install cow, say get the password for the user to use sudo, copy, Control Shift V, Y. There you go. Now your server is much more protected. And let's just see something here. Last time when I logged in, I received a couple of failed logins. Now you can see there aren't any, and you can come back even after 24 hours. You'll see that there are no failed logins. So these are things that you shouldn't take for granted. They're very, very important for security, especially when you're fighting bots. And nowadays, bots are the bigger threat. Bots are the bigger threat because they're used to scan for any loopholes in your server, in your website. So if you can block them, well and good. So that pretty much covers this part. Let's go to CrowdSec and let's install CrowdSec. So first of all, add the CrowdSec repository and then install CrowdSec. And then since I installed NF tables, we're going to install the NF tables bouncer. So the bouncer is what is responsible for blocking IPs. So let's just copy and come back, Control Shift V, enter. Yes. 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 Let me add all these yeses here. DNF install, DNF -y, -y. Yes. The firewall bouncer and CrowdSec have been installed. So what next? Let's just see if CrowdSec automatically enabled something for us. Okay, this is good. You can see it detected that we have Apache, we have Dovecot, MariaDB, MySQL, and all this running on our server. So this means that it has automatically added all the collections that are needed to protect those services. So if you enable any service, you can, if you do enable something else, because I have seen that I haven't enabled Nginx. Nginx is not there. In case I enable and install Nginx, you can do CS, CLI. In fact, let me just go and do that. Let me go to my cPanel here. Nginx. Let's go to Nginx Manager. Install. So Nginx has been installed. Once I've enabled Nginx Manager and enabled the cache for Nginx, I believe now Nginx will be recognized on the server. So if I was to do CrowdSec CLI setup, oh man, sudo again, sudo, enter the password, copy, Control Shift V. So detect and configure services, press enter. And now you can see it is detecting Nginx as well. So just press enter. Do you want to continue? It's adding the collection for Nginx. Yes, continue. Just press enter. Yes, press enter. And we can reload. CrowdSec. Control Shift C, Control Shift V. All right. So now, if you've set up rate limiting on Nginx, IPs will be blocked if they exceed that. If they also try to pass your Nginx logs, trying to figure out if there are any insecurities, they will also be blocked. It used to be that instead of doing CLI setup, you could just enter this. I don't know whether it's still available. Okay, it seems like it's no longer available. So let me just remove it there. Just remove it from there. Control S. So if you need to set up, you can just do CS CLI, that is for CrowdSec CLI setup. If you enable any new services, just do it like this. Let's just confirm if our bouncer is being recognized. So CS CLI bouncers list. Oh man, sudo. All right, so our bouncer is there, well and good. So tomorrow, just give it like 24 hours. CS CLI, come back and check if there are any IPs that have been blocked. Decisions list. Sudo. Okay, right now there are no active decisions. There are no active decisions, but come back tomorrow, you'll probably see that there are certain IPs that have been banned, have been blocked. So if you find that an IP that you're using, sometimes it will even block your own IP. If you find that is the case, look at CS CLI decisions list, and then decisions, you can do -H to see what you can do. You can delete. So Control L. So decisions delete, and you can do -H again to see how you can delete. You can delete an IP. Where is that? You can delete all. If you do -all, it will delete all current decisions. If you do -I, it will delete a source IP. So maybe you want to delete your own IP or a specific IP for a client. They're not able to access their own server. You can do so. Let me just do Control L to clear the screen. Sudo CS CLI decisions list delete -I, and you can delete the IP. Right. So that should pretty much cover this. And if you want to back up the server, you're using WHM. So this is already built into your WHM. So let's go to backup. Is it here under backup configuration? Here you can see you can enable backups. The type of backups that you want to enable, make sure you compress the backups. Check available disk space. If the disk space is maybe less than 10%, don't bother with the backup. Don't bother with the backup if your disk space is 90% filled. Maximum destination backup timeout. You can increase this. It doesn't really have to be that. Maybe you have a big server. Maximum backup restoration timeout. And you can choose if you want to do the daily backups. You can choose when you want to do the backups. Daily backups. Select specific days for the backup. Retention, how many backups do you want to retain? Maybe you want 15 backups. If you have enough space, you can have even up to 30. 30 will be retained. And once they reach 15, the last one will be deleted and a new one will be added. You can do weekly backup. That is, if you want to do weekly backup, do weekly. You can do monthly backups as well. It depends on what you need. You know your system, you know how well you want to back up your server. And then most importantly, if you want to back up remotely, you can select the destination. If you want to back up to Hetzner storage box, you can use SFTP or WebDAV. So I don't have a storage box with me right now, but the easiest one to set up is the SFTP. So SFTP, once you create the destination for SFTP, enter the name, maybe Hetzner storage box, and then you can select to transfer systems as well. Don't select that. And then the backup directory, once you log into your Hetzner storage box, you can create a directory and then you add that directory here, or if you don't, it's going to use the root directory. And then the remote host, this is the Hetzner URL. You will usually get the link to your Hetzner storage box, and then the port and then the remote account username. Hetzner will usually send you that, something starting with U. So you can just search for SFTP storage box access with SFTP. You can use this to access your storage box for SFTP. So use port 22. That is for SFTP. Make sure you explicitly add port 22 if you want to access your Hetzner storage box. So come and use the port. I wanted to confirm the port. Use port 22. And then the user, that's the username that you'll get from Hetzner. And then you'll use password authentication. That is a password for your user on Hetzner. And you can leave that at default and then just save. So that's pretty much how to set up the remote backup for Hetzner. You can use all these others, even Backblaze. So that should pretty much end this. If you have any more questions, feel free to let me know. I'm going to include this for you and this as well. That's it for this one. If you have a question, just let me know. Reach out and I'll see what I can do. In this video, let's see how we can install HTTP on Ubuntu 22.04. If you're going to run your website, then make sure you do this. You follow all these processes, because these are very important in securing your server. As soon as you get your server, make sure you follow the Ubuntu 22.04 initial server post, and I will leave this link in the description. Down here, I want to go to here. I will click here on script generation. I want to generate the HTTP script. While that is happening, I want to restart my server. Sudo reboot, or you can also restart your server from this side. If you go into your instances, so this is on Valtra, you can restart your server. Server restart. I will restart it from this end. Okay, so it has restarted. But first of all, let me go and generate our script. So let's generate our installation script. And if you have a small server, 2 GB and below, I would suggest that you go with Nginx instead of Apache. So I will not install Apache. I will install PHP FPM, and I can install multiple PHP versions because I don't know what I will be running. And for FTP, I will install Pro FTP. Named, yeah, this is for DNS, MySQL. I don't install Postgres, so I'll leave that out. Exim, I will definitely leave Exim installed. Exim, of course, you need both Exim and Dovecoat, because this is for IMAP. This is the one that works with the mail clients, and this is the one that delivers the mail transfer protocol. This is the one that will transfer the mail, so you need both of them. This, I will not install that. Clamav, I will install that. Spam Assassin, I'll leave that. IP tables, of course. Fail to burn, definitely you need this. And then Quota, no, I don't need that. I'm just going to leave it out. You can activate the HTTP API. I will not activate it. Force, I want to force the installation. If there's any error, force the installation. Interactive, definitely ask me what I need. And then port, make sure you're using a Cloudflare port. So I'm going to choose 2053. Just go online and search for Cloudflare ports. And I will use port 2053. This way I will be able to use Cloudflare. There's a list of ports that is accepted on Cloudflare, is accepted through the Cloudflare network. Go online and look for them. Host name, of course. When we were setting up the server, we did set up a host name. I will use a different website here. I will not use bizanosa.com. Let me use bizanosa.club. And I will change I will change the host name again to match that, and I will use that as my host name. And email, admin email, set up your admin email there. I can just use Bizanosa at Gmail. What else? Password, set up a password for your server. If you don't, you may need to reset the password, and you can reset it like this on Ubuntu or Debian. Password, let me just write a password here, and let me save it somewhere. Language, English with debs, not really. And then after that, I'm just going to click on proceed. I will copy that to run onto my server. So I need to log into the server. I know I'm definitely logged out because I restarted the server. So first I will log into the server. You can see I'm logging in via the SSH key that we set up for our server. Control L to clear the screen. And then I will download the package for installing HDSCP. And then after we download that, let's copy this, the configurations that we want. So anyway, when I click on it, it copies. Okay. So let me come back. I will paste the script in there, press enter, enter my sudo password. And then this might take a while. So let's just be patient and wait. It's going to install Nginx, multiple PHP environments. It's going to install different PHP versions. It's going to install the DNS server, Exim for mail server, and then Dovecot. This is for mail clients, and then MariaDB, Pro FTP for the FTP server, and then it's going to install IP tables plus fail to burn. If that's what you want, you can enter Y, enter, and let it install what it needs. So just give it some time. I will come back in case it asks me to do anything. I will come back and resume recording. All right, the installation is complete. If we scroll up, you're going to see it has installed different versions of PHP here. Okay, now the installation is complete. Just press any key to continue. And if you scroll up, you will find your admin details. Make sure that you copy this. So by default, the username will be admin, but the password will be what you set. Or if you forgot to set a password, you can easily set up a password as I've shown you here. Log into SSH and you want to set a password for admin. You'll set your password there. Copy that, copy, and then I will save it somewhere. I will save it inside here, paste, and then I can come back and I can just press enter. And when you press enter, it's going to reboot your server.